Hello again and good morning. This is Ruth with a great panel here, and we're here to talk about multiculturalism with autism. And I have all these beautiful women over here, parents, professionals at the same time, and even as parents, we are professionals. So, yeah, we've given ourselves that crown. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and let them introduce themselves. And my name is Ruth Tanai, the founder of Step Up for Autism in Kenya. And I have also a son with autism. So we can start with Rachel. You can do the intro, and then Aura, and then Maria, like that.
Okay, hi, I'm Rachel Sofarelli. I'm a BCBA living in Florida right now.
I'm Ira. I'm RBT living in Florida right now.
Where are you from?
Oh, I'm from Ghana, just FYI.
Hi, I'm Maria Mwinde. I'm based in Kenya. I live in Kenya, Nairobi.
Oh, she's still mute.
Sylvia and Casa, unmute your mic.
Hey. Okay, hi. I apologize for that. My name is Sylvia in Cancer. I live in New Jersey. I'm a special education teacher. I specifically work with students on the spectrum.
My name is Marie Ferrier. I live in Florida. I'm an occupational therapist, and I have a son on the spectrum.
Awesome. I'm going to ask this question randomly. It's not from the. I'm just gonna pick who's gonna answer. Maria.
Yes.
Can you tell me what is autism as a parent? What is autism?
Well, my understanding of autism is that it's a neurodevelopmental disorder that affects communication mostly and interaction in the affected. I can say in kids or grown-ups on the spectrum. Sorry.
That's okay. Thank you so much. And Sylvia and Kanza?
Right. Yeah, so I definitely agree with what Maria just said. It affects, to add to that, it affects children in different ways, and it manifests in so many different ways depending on the child. The spectrum is very wide, as we've all read about it. So kids could be on the very low end of the spectrum, or they could be on the very high end of the spectrum. They could be very high functioning or very low functioning. Some kids might be in between those, in between what I have described. So it's you cannot. The interesting thing I've read about autism is if you meet one person with autism, you have met only one person with autism. So you cannot generalize that because this child, is on the spectrum, he behaves this way, he screams, he flaps, So it's if you have that mentality, then you know how to deal with kids with autism when you meet one. You take your time to know who they are. You understand what their interests are. You treat them as an individual and a unique child. So that's my understanding of autism and how I see kids with autism or kids on the spectrum.
Thank you. Maria and Aura, can people confuse autism, and how?
I think yes and no. I think that, like she said, you have to treat every individual as, because you can meet somebody who has autism and may do things that another child may not do. So it's very different in every human being. And Richard and I were talking about it yesterday. There are certain things that kids on the spectrum would do that is socially accepted, and things that we might even do as people like that. Because we're doing it, it's fine. And then a kid on the spectrum is doing it, and it's like, oh, you're doing it because they're different. So it's yes and no in both of us.
Okay. Marie, can you add to that, and then we start?
Can you repeat the question for me? I'm sorry.
Okay, so I asked what was autism. Can people confuse autism with any other disorder?
To answer the first one, what is autism? Mm-hmm. To me personally, I think autism is children that tend to stand out from what society expects them to be. They are children who has exceptional qualities and who are extraordinary children because they don't share the same characteristics that we tend to expect from just regular children. So it takes extraordinary parents to really teach and work with these children. Yes, people can, they can mistake certain characteristics with kids who have autism, because sometimes there are certain kids that may present with certain signs, and automatically, because people tend to freak out the minute they see the signs, they think, oh my God, my child is on the spectrum. But really, it's just, you have to give the child time to really develop and really see what those signs are before you can quickly make a judgment.
Thank you so much, everybody. Esther. I think Esther's network is kind of slow. I hope she can hear us. Esther, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah. I'm Esther Mongoy, and I'm a parent, I'm a caregiver, and also I'm an advocate of autism. I run a center for learners with autism here in Kenya.
Thank you, Esther. We were talking about autism. So can you describe what autism to you is as a parent?
As a parent, I would say autism being a neurodevelopmental disorder that affects areas in communication, social interaction, and also in behavior. In my case, for my son, he's now 16 years old. I may describe it from now what I have seen or what I have gone through. And the challenges of him being unable to develop a language and communicate meaningfully, and also the part of behavior. And he's very socially, he's not very interactive, and also the sensory part of it, a lot of sensory issues.
All right. Thanks, Maria. Thanks, Esther. So we go with the first questions, where I'm going to have Rachel and Aura answer this. In the absence of words in other languages for this disorder, does it create unique barriers for discussing care with family and agreeing on a treatment plan?
Can you hear me?
Yes, but we have to mute, and you have to mute her because her network is slow, so she will get us late after that. So anyway, I was asking Esther and Aura, kindly, can you explain, is the absence of words in other languages for this disorder create unique barriers and for discussing care with family members and or care treatment or plan or involvement?
Yeah, so we were talking about this a little bit yesterday, and kind of how that affects people here where we are. We have a lot of families who speak Spanish, and so communicating with the families so that we can collaborate on goals, and also just very simply from step one, trying to pick a means of communication for the child. So if they're hearing one language at home and they're being instructed and taught to speak in a different language in therapy or at school, that provides a lot of confusion for the child and for the family. So that's definitely a barrier that we run into often. And we were talking about it in the context of Ghana as well. If you want to speak to that?
Yeah. So we were saying that, for example, if you go into like a community and they speak Tree and you're doing therapy in English, like, first of all, we're confusing the kids because some of them don't even have like any verbal speech. So then they go home and their parents and family members are communicating with them in a different language. So it brings a lot of confusion because they're already trying to process, trying to talk, and then you're coming to school in this English, and then you go home in this Tree, and it's also difficult because then who are we to decide what language they should speak? Because the parents have to do what's comfortable for them, but also when they come like to school, the teachers are talking to them or communicating a different language. So it's pretty difficult, I think, and that causes a lot of confusion because then I think it makes the kids also really frustrated because you're telling me to sit down in English and I go home and it's like, oh, Tanasi, and it's just like, okay, now they have to process that extra work for the kid, and it's a lot.
Yeah.
It's interesting to hear that from Rachel and because my experience has been different.
Okay.
The parents that I work with, Hispanics actually, and the group of students that I've been working with them since kindergarten, and they came in speaking very little English. Some of them, could speak Spanish, but I think it has worked to our advantage. We've been able to work closely together, and even though some of the parents still don't speak English, we've been using technology. We've been using Google Translate to make sure that they understand what I'm sending them. They also respond. Sometimes they accidentally send me things in Spanish, and I have to Google Translate it. And I have a student who is now translating for the mom. This is a student exactly. So it's and I think there's research out there that supports the fact that kids who speak multiple languages actually help them with developmentally. I have to get into that a little more, but I think that these are unique children who have great capabilities. So if they're able to learn multiple languages, even better. But I understand the challenges also that some of them are barely learning, acquiring these languages, and it could be confusing also. But in my case, it has actually worked for both the children and the parents. And I guess I have to work on my Spanish skills now.
Thank you so much, Maria.
Yes, I wanted to add to what Sylvia says because it's something that I've been really interested in, trying to see bilingualism versus autism, because even when my son was he's now 5, but at the age of 2, when he was first diagnosed, the pediatrician told us that it's better for us not to speak Creole in the home because he already has so many delays and that will affect him more. But I respectfully disagreed with the pediatrician at the time and continued to speak Creole with him. And at about 18 months before he went into the regression period and lost the words that he knew, he was saying some Creole words at home. Mm-hmm. And even now at 5 years old, my mother-in-law who lives with us, she doesn't speak English. She speaks Creole. He understands Creole and understands English. And I've done a little bit of research, and there's nowhere in the research where it shows that it has a negative effect on kids with autism, but more a positive effect.
Definitely.
Muinde, can you chip in on that as language barrier cause any challenges?
Yeah, okay. I'll go with Marie. We were told the same thing when we started therapy for Shen, considering that we speak both Kiswahili and English at home. And at times we have a little bit of mother tongue, and being from a different tribe from his dad, that means Shen he has a little bit of 3 languages. So we had to narrow down to English and Kiswahili. And over the years, we've discovered that he actually has an understanding of both of them. Because I can tell him sit down in English, and I'll still tell him, then later on, I tell him kachini, and he'll still follow the instruction. So at some point, it works. Especially, if it's bilingual, you can work with 2 languages. But 3 can tend to be a bit confusing. Yeah.
All right. Esther, can you add to that if you can hear me?
I echo Muinde's sentiments, given that I'm also intertribal. Yeah, I'm in a intertribal marriage, and my own understands two languages. I think the first one, the language for him, he developed understanding of Kiswahili more before he learned some few words in English, but he understands both. You can give a command or a request in both languages, and he follows. So the third language is quite a challenge, and it takes time for him to process what communication. It takes time for him to process the communication in a different language apart from English and Swahili.
Thank you so much, Esther. So I'm going to go to Casa, and Casa, the second question is going to you. As a professional, how can we culturally help in identifying and creating a framework for understanding a disorder in school and in home setting?
I want to talk a little bit about my childhood and in Ghana, and I'm sure Ira can identify with this. It's not, when I was growing up, I had in my classroom, as I remember, in elementary and middle school and high school, there were kids who struggled, and we really, at that time, I didn't know about autism. And I'm pretty sure my teachers didn't know about autism. So culturally, it was tough at that time. And I'm sure so many students fell through the cracks as a result of that, which is unfortunate. And it is still happening. I remember 4 years ago, about 3 years ago, I went to Ghana. I visited one of the autism centers. It's in Accra, run by Mary. Mary was on your show a couple of weeks ago, I think. And it's not very expensive, but it will be expensive for somebody, for an average Ghanaian. So if they cannot afford it, that child might not have any meaningful education. So culturally, and the understanding of kids with special needs, I think it's different from country to country. And in Ghana, for example, I don't want to think that people have come to a full grasp of what it means to have a child with disabilities, and it's they've come far, from what I have seen and what I have read and what I'm seeing right now. But it's not for everybody. It's still for just a few people, who can afford it, who can read, and who can access information on some of these disabilities, and the parents who really want, the best. And I'm sure every parent wants the best for their child, but accessing, the resources to offer these to kids is very limited. So culturally, I will say it takes a lot, and for developing countries, typically Ghana, that I know of, it's most kids, unfortunately, will not benefit from all the resources that are available now to support them to develop to unique individuals and people who can really contribute to their societies. Unfortunately, they might not have that growing up. So culturally, I think depending on where you are geographically or socioeconomic background, actually in a sense will affect how that child develops. Whether that child will be successful or not depends very much on what that parent has access to or believes in. And I've seen that even in our community here in America. Parents have traveled, but when you talk to some parents, they still struggle with accepting the fact that there are kids who are born with disabilities and we have to support them. But until that parent gets to that point of accepting that my child needs help and he can be helped, or that child can be helped to develop, as a typically developing child, it's then they cannot be of help to that child. So culturally, it's I know it's affecting some parents, especially parents from Africa. That some of them that I have encountered, they still struggle with accepting that, because of how we grew up, because of our culture back home, that we are not a very open culture to disabilities, so to speak. So it definitely has something to do with how we frame, or how we put together resources for helping people with disability in our society. Yeah.
Thank you, Sylvia. That was really great points. Aura and Rachel, can you chip in?
To add to what Sylvia said, it's so the resources there right now that I know of are very limited. So it's either you're financially at a certain point in your life where you can actually have that access. Like from personal experience, my nephew gets therapy, but let's say you're looking at, let's say, $1,000 a month, and not every person can afford that.
Exactly.
So it's very limited. I mean, and it's not really, it's not fair, because there's so many other kids that have or need these services, but it's like it's for middle class or rich, and then they get the services, so the other kids are not able to have those access to just even speech or OT or ABA. So, and that definitely affects like the framework, because if people have access to it, I think it would be easier for much kids to have ABA. But it's like, okay, someone opens a place, you have to pay let's say $1,500 a month for Monday through Thursday, and how many people can honestly afford that? Even in America, like they have insurance, but it's still very difficult for people to have access to that.
Yeah.
We were talking too, obviously the financial barrier is huge, but on top of that, kind of Sylvia, like what you were talking about with the families accepting the diagnosis and understanding it, and even just thinking about expectations and goal setting. There's a lot of focus we find here, and also Era was saying in Ghana as well, for educational expectations. Oh, my child should be able to do numeracy and literacy and those things. And it's like, can we take a step back and maybe focus on having their needs met, having them have communication goals, functional goals, so that they can be happy and successful in whatever way that looks like for them. So that's definitely a barrier too, I think, culturally. And that's happening here as well, for sure. Just the expectations that family have, and the challenges in trying to create functional skills and goals for the kids so that they can be successful.
Thank you so much, Aura and Rachel. Muinde, echo that.
Well, I'll start with what Sylvia said. Because looking back, when we were in primary school, because I studied for my primary education, I was here in Kenya, and for a greater part, I was in a public school. And you'd notice that in class, there are certain students who will struggle quite a lot.
Right.
And looking back, when I'm looking, okay, I'm in communication with some of them right now. And some of them grew up to be pilots. So I started questioning, like, how is it possible that they struggle so much in class and they're pilots now? That was until for my high school education, I finished in New Zealand. I was in a Catholic school, a private school, and in that school we used to study. It was what's the term for it? It's an all-inclusive school. So it's as much as we're having it's normal education. We actually are integrated. So that's the first time I came across autistic children. Not that I hadn't come across them earlier on in my years. It's just that I never knew there was such a condition as autism. Because people tend to know the mainstream one, like cerebral palsy, where you can see mostly if someone is deformed, if someone is deaf, say if someone is blind. But when it comes to neurodevelopmental disorders, a lot of people don't know about them. So for me, it was actually quite amusing how I'd been in class with someone who's nonverbal, and they'd even perform better than me. Because at first, okay, this is weird. This person doesn't talk, but when it comes to exam, they're exactly better than you. Then you came to understand, like, they're actually perfectly okay. It's just that the only bridge in between us is the communication bit of it.
Right.
So yeah, that was one of the things. And I'll also talk about when it comes to bridging the gap, especially in the African setup where people are yet to fully accept neurodevelopmental disorder, or even have the exposure or the information. So you'd find people in I don't want to say in a typical African home, in the not traditional per se, but some people tend to hide their children because there's so much stigma associated with having special needs kids. So now you can imagine being me. I'm only 29 and I'm very vocal. I had my son when I was really young. I had Shane when I was, I think, 24, 25. So it's already stigma enough that I had a child out of wedlock that year. Then this child now has autism and he also has ADHD. So some people look at it as if it's a curse. So for some, their normal response is it's a curse because you left your parents home without their blessings. You ventured into marriage, such a sacred institution, especially when you're looking at it from a Christian point of view. And that is, for them, it's like either the gods are punishing me or either my child is cursed. And the advice is I should seek spiritual cleansing the traditional way.
Wow.
Yes.
That's the good thing about education. And when you're educated, when you've been actually, and exposure as well, because when you've been to another part of the world where you see these children who are normally stigmatized in our society getting an equal chance just like you, and they're actually doing better than you. Because I mean, this is someone who used to be at the bottom in class, and now they're earning better than I am. That means like they also deserve, like the first realization is they also deserve an equal chance. Because I get told off quite a lot. Because I also have a neighbor who asked me like, why are you taking Shane to such an expensive school? Shane is my son, and Shane doesn't talk. For them, it's a waste of money. But for me, I had to explain to them like he also deserves an equal opportunity, just like any other children.
Yes.
And the only way, other than taking him to hospital for occupational therapy, sensory integration, is give him at least a chance to be in a normal school setup where he can interact, learn the social interaction from other children, because mostly they learn based on interaction. And he won't learn that, considering he's an only child. He won't learn that if I lock him up at home. So yeah, for us, once you accept your child's condition, it's the only way you can actually seek for help. First, it's up to us parents to accept, because you cannot help your child if you're in denial.
Yep. Definitely.
Thank you so much. That's insightful. Yeah, we know our people back home. I know my son. They prayed for my son even after explaining. In the morning, I woke up and we had these church members. I had traveled up country and the grandmother was asking all these questions. So I was trying to explain to them. And the first thing we woke up in the morning, we had a church pastor. And there were like 6 of them, and they started praying, holding my son's head, whoever did this to him. I'm just thinking in my so my son doesn't like to be touched. At that time, he never liked to be, but this pastor kept on holding my child's head like that, like, what? Those we cast this person. I said, we have just to let them pray, because that's their belief. You can't pray. No, kind of they're blessing him, even though they're praying whatever they're thinking they're doing. But we just have to let them pray hard, and we pray. I think my son came to a place where he just had to leave because there was so much noise, and he was like not understanding what's going on. And so we had that part. So I understand you, Mwinde, from where we're coming from.
Yeah, I've had that experience. You go to family gatherings, and normally in a normal, especially the Christian families, and every celebration has to start either with a Thanksgiving service. So people will start pushing you. You need to take your child to the priest so that he can be blessed. Like my son right now is not baptized. They're like, the only way you can defeat the devil is if you get your child baptized. I'm like, I'll get that child baptized, but this is a neurodevelopmental disorder. Not unless, God can, you have to factor in, like, miracles do happen, yes?
Right.
I'm a spiritual person, but also open-minded in the sense that as I wait for that miracle, I might as well seek for help. I have nothing to lose.
But definitely, I think educating the public on that is also important. That you believe in, we all believe in God. We all Christians, but I also believe that medically, God gave them the wisdom, to work with these children. So why don't we combine all those? But it's interesting, and it's just you wish that people will understand it more.
True.
Marie, can you add to that?
Yes, to echo what everyone is saying, I believe that language is a reflection of a country. So coming from an underdeveloped country like Haiti, I find that the language is also underdeveloped. So there's the lack of education. Because of the lack of education, you have the lack of describable terminology to use to really connect with the parents to make them understand what the disorder is really about. So I find that I struggle with that a lot. So what I do, I find myself just describing some of the symptoms that their child has and making the connection with the disorder, as opposed to going into explaining what the disorder is, because a lot of them, they don't really understand. And I agree with Sylvia. It is crucial that we educate parents, and we try to find ways to help them disassociate certain religious beliefs, supernatural beliefs, in order for them to see that this is a scientific and medical disorder. It's not because the parents did something, or they're cursed, or it's some supernatural thing that's going on with the kids. So education is really, really key to really connect with the parents, and really make them see that this is real. And with a lot of therapy and training, some of the symptoms they can be reduced, and the kids can succeed.
Right, definitely. You're muted.
You muted yourself.
Oh yeah, there we go. Okay,
Okay.
thank you guys. Thank you. I'm just agreeing to all what you are adding to that. So Esther, can you add to that? Does we can you echo to what everybody else has chipped in?
All right. Now, I think we're like all talking about educating the society and the community in regards to autism, which draws to creating awareness and acceptance. And all of us are from different countries, and our cultures are totally different. What you might be, Rachel and Naura, I see you laughing. What you might be encountering in in the country where you are is not probably what you are. Am I making sense? You're laughing. Oh, you cannot hear me?
No, we can.
We can hear you. I can hear you. They are just maybe talking. It's okay. Go ahead. They
Sorry, we have to mute our video because there's a lot of background noise from the children. We're not laughing at you.
From
Esther.
basically what I'm saying, okay, maybe I'm having issues with network, but it's changing the whole narrative. Yes? I'm saying it's changing the whole narrative and start focusing probably on the abilities of kids with autism. That way you're able to change the perception and the way people view autism according to the wherever you are, the setup and the level at which you are in your country, because we are totally different. Our setup is totally different. So by this I mean, when you start creating awareness, you not only focus on the inabilities of kids with autism, but you also focus on their abilities and their special giftings. That way you are able to teach and show the world that they're different, but the diversity, they can be able to embrace the diversity in these kids, that they are different, at the same time they are able differently. I hope I'm making sense. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, my point is to focus on the ability. Oh, bye.
No?
Ruth, you're still muted.
Oh.
Okay.
Okay, go
I'm
on,
just
Ruth.
No, I'm just waiting to see if you're done. I say we can hear you.
I'm done. I'm done.
All right, thank you. I didn't want to start talking when you're talking. So thank you so much, Esther, for your points. You guys are making good points. And I'm going to ask Marie at the bottom. What difficulty have you identified as a parent trying to get diagnosis for your child as a professional and as a parent?
Trying to get the diagnosis, honestly, it was not difficult for me at the time because I worked in the field already as a therapist. And when I mentioned, when I spoke with our pediatrician and I listed all the different signs, she was very receptive and gave me the referrals. Most of my struggles have been with the public school system, really. The IEP meetings, trying to get the services that I know that my son needs. So that's where most of my problems lie, not really receiving the diagnosis. So I'll let someone else who's had real issues getting a diagnosis kind of pick up there. But my main problem has been with the public school system.
What about you, Muhinde?
Well, Kenya being Kenya, it had, at first, Shen was clinically diagnosed back in 2018. And it was quite the challenge because at first you go to hospitals, yeah? And I'd been to different hospitals, including, and one is AR at our local mall. So we take Shane to the doctors, and when we raised concern that he had delayed speech, for them, the typical answer first I got was, he's a boy, he'll outgrow it, and boys have slow growth spans as compared to girls. So the first thing, and actually from AR went to different hospitals, we've been to Iran, we've been to quite a number. So every time when they kept on telling us, you just give him time, he's a boy, boys are slow. So give him time. And eventually we took him, someone else advised us to sign him up for daycare, at a daycare, so that he can interact with other children in the hope that his speech is going to improve, or at least he'll pick a word with you. So when we took him to childcare, that is when they raised the concern by the second day. And their fear was that he could have some hearing impairment. So they referred us to Ngong District Hospital, where the school doctor was based. So we go to Ngong District. They didn't have someone who actually deals with neurodevelopmental disorders. So when he actually interacted with the child, his diagnosis was there's a very high probability that Shane has mild autism, but he referred us to Kenyatta Hospital private wing. Not private wing, sorry, the Doctor's Plaza. So we actually had to go, I went again to health center at Karen for second opinion. We get there and they're just general, the only medics who are available other than nurses were general practitioners. And for them, they don't specialize at all in neurodevelopmental disorders. So they referred me again to Kenyatta Hospital or Mbagathi. So I had to go again on another, I go to Kenyatta Hospital. So we started with the ENT and they sent us to occupational therapy. That's the department. So they made their own diagnosis and they told us for them, they're convinced that Shane has ADHD, that he doesn't have autism. So they argued that he can be one of those, not badly off. Like for them, they told us he had mild autism. But as we waited to book again, we had to see a child psychiatrist. Same hospital, but under the mental health department. First challenge is the waiting list. Because we started the intervention in, I think it was around either August or September. By the time we were able to see the child psychiatrist, that was in October, and only because someone else missed the appointment. So it's quite a challenge. So, and that was actually like almost the fourth attempt. The other major challenge we experienced, especially in the Kenyan market, because lately, if you if you do your research well, you'll realize that there are a lot of toddlers between the age of, say, 3, 4, and 5 who are autistics. So people have turned it to a business. So some people will tell you they actually specialized in it. So they'll tell you they're therapists until you ask for the credentials, because they don't have hospitals, they don't have the centers. So someone will tell you, like, we can do house calls. And when you ask for their referrals, they won't give you. And they don't charge, their charges are not cheap. So at the end of the day, by the time you get professional help, you might encounter quite a number of them, and you lose a lot of money. So that was actually our biggest challenge, especially when he was done with sensory integration. He did very well. When he started speech therapy, he couldn't concentrate, because at Kenyatta Hospital, you need to factor in that there are medical students from KMTC as well as Nairobi University. These are students who are learning. So when therapy is being conducted on a child, there'll be quite a number of them, more than a handful, because they're observing. But now you need to factor in that my son doesn't like being in a crowded place. So for him, it became very overwhelming. Now we had to stop. Around the same time, so we've been shopping around for therapists, and we managed to get to KISE, that is the Kenya Institute of Special Education. They do have a therapist, but the problem is they're understaffed. So just one therapist, because you need to factor in, like, we took him there, I think it was last year around October when he started the intervention again. In October, the only session I could get was in December. Now you see, you have to wait for months. And for therapy to be effective, you need at least one session per week, at least one session. So if you tell me I'm taking my child in for therapy in October, the first week, and you tell me to wait until December, that's already a waste of my money, because it won't be effective, it won't help. So yeah, those are the major challenges we've experienced.
Well, that's major challenge.
Yeah.
Rachel, do you want to chip into that?
Yeah. So we were going to touch on a lot of the same points. The financial burden obviously is huge. And I think this is a problem here, and it's much, much worse in a lot of African nations. It's just the number of people, like you were saying, Maria, who are credentialed to actually make the diagnosis. I know for us, we require like this comprehensive diagnosis from either a pediatrician or a psychiatrist, developmental psychiatrist. And again, waiting list, because there's only maybe one in the city or the state or whatever. But then on top of that too, and this is something that came up a lot last year at the PACA conference, is the diagnostic criteria isn't culturally adjusted. So you have things in there like, can the child independently brush their teeth? Well, me brushing my teeth looks very different than a child in a village in Ghana brushing their teeth with a chewing stick. So we have criteria to make this diagnosis that don't necessarily fit different cultures and different contexts, and that's a huge barrier. Did you have anything to add to that?
I think for a challenge as a therapist for me, it's and we will hear like expectations versus the reality. As a therapist, sometimes you'll deal with parents that like, oh, fix this, and I'm just like, oh, like they don't. First of all, they haven't accepted the kid has autism. And then they come in and you're telling them how the day was. It's like, oh, he can do this, just fix it. And it's very hard as a therapist when you see a kid doing something and you're actually explaining to the parent like the milestones. But because they don't even want to accept the kid has autism, it can be a very big barrier. Because at the end of the day, that's the parent, and you want to communicate like things that they're doing. And so when parents haven't accepted that the kids have autism, it's very difficult for them. And also I get where some parents are coming from, because it's very stressful. And we're talking about I feel like some parents need like a mental health day, because you'll see some parents cry and break down, and it's a lot. So it makes it challenging, because like, let's say over the weekend, if a kid is at home and they get everything that they want, when they come back on Monday, they're a whole different kid, and you're not on the same page. So it's very challenging as a therapist. So
Yeah,
can you add to that?
support as the kids do, and that's lacking as well.
Okay. Thank you, Aura and Rachel. Sylvia, you want to echo that, and then we go to the last question?
Yeah, I mean, from what I have heard from parents, trying to get the correct diagnosis for their child was difficult. Not even in America, because there are wait lists also for them to see people who are certified or who have the credentials to diagnose autism. So it's and they share their frustration, and they usually, I believe Maria mentioned that the doctor said it could just be a delay. I've heard that over and over again, that the child, it takes a while, especially for boys, it takes a while for them to develop language, develop skills that their typically developing counterparts are doing. So even some pediatricians think they try to play the weight game, that sometimes it doesn't help. I do early intervention also, so I've encountered some parents who shared their frustration, that it's I wish I could do I could I would have done this earlier if I had had the choice. If somebody gave me the piece of like, here, this is it, go get the services for your child. But they kept telling me that that you'll be okay. It takes a while. Kids develop differently, and it's true though. Kids develop differently. I had a student who didn't gain any language until he was 6 years old. So it's different. And I remember I spoke to a speech therapist about that child, and she told me that in her line of service, she's only seen kids after 4. It's very difficult for them to start talking, but this child started talking at 8, 6, so they develop differently. But I can see that I've heard that frustration that that getting diagnosis for that child. I've heard that over and over again, that it's difficult to get that. And I can imagine in Ghana, I don't even want to think about what parents go through, because the wait list. And when I went to Ghana, I met a guy from Kolebu Teaching Hospital, the largest hospital in Ghana. I think, I'm assuming he was the only speech therapist at Kolebu. So you can imagine the line, the months or maybe the weeks that parents have to wait to even see him with their child. So it's very, very frustrating for parents. And I hope that going forward we'll get a lot of the BCBAs, the OTs in the system to help these parents, because it's one thing getting the diagnosis and another getting the help for that child. But if they don't have that, then it makes it even more frustrating for these parents. So hopefully it gets easier as we go along. Yeah.
Thank you, Sylvie. I'm gonna ask the last question, and I'm gonna start with Marie at the bottom. What can you advise other parents? What are you working on at the moment? And just give them examples of something that they can do in case of maybe frustration, or they feel like a burnout. So this one, all of you will answer as a professional, as a parent, however you're going to answer.
What am I working on? Right now, I feel so bad that I waited until my son is 5 years. I have to be honest. I feel so bad that I waited until my son is 5 to start working on potty training. And it's a nightmare. So that's one thing that is really kicking me. Okay. So I was working with ABA therapists, but because of COVID-19, everything is all over the place. So I've been doing all the intensive potty training, a plan on my own, and we are still on phase 2, day 30. So we still have a long way to go. We still have a long way to go. My advice to parents, my son is very sensory. He's a sensory seeker. So sometimes if you can facilitate and promote the right sensory items for the child in the environment, it helps decrease some of those aggressive behaviors that you see. So I would advise parents, get those swings. Swings are really, really cool things to have for kids. A crash pad, body socks, all these things that provide deep pressure. It helps calm the kids. It helps relax them. So those are really things to have, really cool things to have in the house, so that if your kid is a mover and they're a sensory seeker, they have ways of either getting that energy out and then finding that deep calming pressure that they need to kind of help with their behaviors around the house. Another thing, sometimes because of either a lack of awareness or education, sometimes parents, especially parents from the Caribbean, they feel intimidated when it comes to being present in an IEP meetings at school. They feel as if they're not at a position where they feel like they can tell those professionals what they want them to work on with their kids, or what to focus on. I want parents to know that you are the best advocate for your child. Do not let those professionals make you think they know best, what is best for your child. And don't quickly accept any labels that are being put in your on your child when they go to school, because sometimes those labels can be detrimental to the child. So it's really important that you ask them for specific examples, when the behavior occurs, but then what happens before the behavior occurs. What is it that goes around the classroom that makes my child do these things? Because obviously my child's a different child at home, but then I'm hearing something different in school. So I want parents to challenge these professionals, and it's okay to challenge them. Sometimes parents may feel that they don't have an advocate, they don't have someone to go to for help. So these are all things that we all need to work together, talk to other people, find out how other people have done things so that we can best support parents. But definitely don't just quickly accept any labels that are being put on your child from the school system, because there's a lot of teachers, a lot of professionals that already come into the classroom with implicit, explicit biases. So it's really important that you dig deeper and challenge these professionals.
Wow, thank you, Marie. Rachel, Aura.
That was so beautifully put, Marie. I don't even want to follow that. That was so many good points there. So much good advice. We were going to talk about adjusting the environment. I would say pretty much in all of my experience, any of the kids I've worked with, they're not engaging in these challenging behaviors to be difficult. They're engaging in them because they don't have a way to communicate their wants and needs. And maybe there's a discomfort there from the environment, something that we don't notice. The lights are too bright, or it's too noisy, or their tag on their clothes is scratching them. And I have a lot of like sensory needs as well, so I can empathize with that, with things just making you feel this level of discomfort, which affects the way that you can interact with your environment. So just keeping that in mind and trying to get to the root of what your child is trying to communicate and give them an appropriate way, an understandable way to do that is really the biggest takeaway. But like I said, what Marie said is...
Yeah, and to add to what you said, like, just don't accept what the professionals say. It's all about communication. Like, sit down and have an end goal instead of just saying, oh, the teacher said this, so this is what it is. Like, having an end goal and talking, because at the end of the day, the goal is for the kid to be successful. So if you all communicate and you listen to each other, and nobody's better than anybody, but just like bringing ideas together will definitely be good for the child to be very successful.
Yeah, thank you, Rachel and Aura. Muinde, echo that.
She couldn't have said it any better.
Right.
She said it with so much passion. I'm like, yeah, maybe we're from the same school of thought. So actually, what I encourage people, especially young parents, is to actively be involved in their child's learning. Because what you realize, especially in African countries, in my country, Kenya, first, when you take immediately a son is diagnosed, depending on how badly off, they're going to rule him out as. So most of the time we get told to take the children to unintegrated schools. So you go to some of these schools, one, they're not exposed to autism, because in Kenya, it's still a relatively new field, especially when you factor in the fact that there's very limited information about autism. So you go to some of these schools, especially in private schools, they'll tell you, yes, we do admit autistic children, But you see, at the end of the day, you need to factor in one thing, then business. And for you, all you want is your child to learn, your child to improve. So if you don't take a keen interest, if you don't do follow-ups, you'll be ripped off. Because what we notice, and when some group, I'm sure you're in Kenya Autism Alliance, yeah? And you'll notice parents raising concerns about how they randomly pop in their children's school, and they find that their children were actually secluded. So people are learning, the class is ongoing, and the child has wandered off. So you'll actually meet your child in the corridor. So why take a child? Why make me pay such a lump sum amount of money if you're not going to be interested? So the first thing, for it to work, they have to know that you're actually committed. And it's not even like you're raising your voice, you're being tough. No, like being committed. Personally, it was up to, because I'm very, like I said, the information on autism is very limited. So when you're telling me to take a child to a normal school, an integrated school, I'll know all they're there to do is probably, other than learning, is to learn the social interaction bit from the other children. That was up to until last year. When was it? September, when I went to the Kenya Institute of Special Education and I met a functional assessor called Faith. And Faith told us it's a good thing we took him to an integrated school. But then again, at the end of the day, even if he's in class with normal children, Shane has to have his own IEP, the individualized education plan, so that it can actually be wholesome for him and it's something that can actually bear fruits. So unlike other students who have targets, like at the end of the term, they're supposed to be able to write, to color within the borders. So for Shane, or like be fully potty trained. For Shane, it can be something as simple as we work on the potty training and on him just coloring, because some of them are very sensitive, even like holding the crayons or the color pens, it can be like quite irritating. So even if you can get them to like color on that paper, that's already a win. Yeah. So that is for me how I take the approach on schooling. So, but as a parent, what I do is I went to online advocacy. Like I actually created an Instagram page specifically for autism advocacy, because I came to realize there's still so much taboo. As much as people are educated, there's still so much taboo about having a special needs kid. And it's something I get frowned upon quite a lot. Because some people will tell you, like, I share too much. Like, no one needs to know my business. But you see, even if you tell me no one needs to know my business, those are the same people my son will be in school with. So I'd rather educate a parent. Like, I'd rather tell you, like, this is autism.
Right.
You might not be aware of it, like it's a neurodevelopment disorder. What you need to understand is the moment you see one child with autism, they'll never be the same with another one. Right. So what my son can do, another child can't do. And what that other child cannot do, my child can do. And they could actually be peers in the same age group. Other than that, and you know, the more you're teaching people about it, the more you're exposing them to information about autism. But it's not from a scholarly point of view. It's from my experience as a parent. So I can't say it's professional per se, but it's my experience as a parent. So I just want to create an environment whereby people can be more accepting. And by the time people are gaining acceptance, there has to be like a lot of education done. There's like a lot of awareness creation done. There's a lot of understanding. Like they can only understand if they're taught. Yeah. So I give it everything I got, even when I get told off a bit for being too open. But it's life. I get nothing from staying quiet, because that means it's going to be a repeat of a circle.
Thank you so much, Maria. Cancer?
Yeah, it's very, very interesting to hear from parents and their experiences. That's amazing. But I always say the level of involvement that a parent gives. Or the higher the involvement, I think the higher the results are, the great outcomes for that child. So when I started teaching in 2016, I believe, the first thing that I did was I came up with it's a very small sheet for parents to write down what they are looking for in our classroom, what their child's interests are, what bothers them, things that, and what they love and things like that. So I will get to know their child. And also for them, sometimes parents don't even think about these things, because they haven't had the chance to even think about that, because there are so many things that they have to think about that they don't even sit down to put these things down. So that's what I did. I think I read an article that suggested that, and it was very, very, very good. And they were surprised that they were able to come up with that, to look at that paper and to look at what their kids are interested in and what they're doing and their expectations for their child in my classroom. For me, and I've had that group of kids this is my 5th year with them. They're in 3rd grade. I started with them in kindergarten. And you could see that the involvement, one parent in particular has really impressed me in every aspect. She barely speaks it. She actually doesn't speak English at all. But this child is doing amazing. This child is on a grade level with his reading, his math, and we are going to try to mainstream him next year. And I give the parent a lot of credit. And with IEP meeting that Marie actually mentioned, that some parents feel threatened. I don't know if that's a good word, to come to these tables. I know it could feel like that, sitting with professionals and trying to tell them what to do, but it shouldn't be like that. If you're a parent, you know your child more than anybody else. And it's something that it's not free. You are paying for that. And if that's what the child needs, that's what the child needs. And if you do not ask for that, it's some school districts might get away with it. But if a parent says, this is what my child needs, if my child is entitled to this, this is what I am expecting, for my child. And you don't have to be rude about it. You just have to be, work collaboratively with the teacher, with the case manager, and you will see that it makes a whole lot of difference. If they know that you are involved, from experience, if they know that you are involved and you're on top of things, they give everything to that child too. If you're checking in and you're coming in asking for what's going on, it's not, like I said, you don't have to be rude about it. I have seen parents, pop in and they're not very nice about what they're asking for. And we are human, so just make sure that you are asking for what is good for your child, what your child needs, but also keep in mind that you are working with people and be respectful about it. At the end of the day, we are all looking for the best for that child, because if the child is doing well, it's beneficial for both the parents and the teacher or the any specialist working with that child. It makes your work easier. You are very happy that the child is successful and you're seeing great outcomes. It just adds to your practice. So I think the collaboration between therapists and teachers and parents, I think, is very, very important, and it should be mutually beneficial. It shouldn't be one way of me telling you as a parent what to do. But it's for parents who come in. I remember my parents will come in and tell me they didn't sleep well. Some of my parents would text me in the morning that, they didn't eat their breakfast, just to let me know that, it could be challenging in the morning because they didn't have breakfast. A child one day came in, he loves McDonald's, and he got in and he was crying that morning. And I called mommy and I told mommy, this is what's going on. And mommy said, Mr. Cancer, we couldn't pass by McDonald's this morning. And that's what started the whole thing, So if you let the teacher know or the therapist know what's going on as a parent, then they know what's going on, that they can work with that child, and they can talk to that child in, any language or any form of communication that you have with that child. And it makes a difference. It makes a difference.
Oh my God. Yeah, thank you guys. I can't agree to. It's like, you said everything. Like everything has been said. I don't have anything to add. Only I can say where like for me, I would say educate where you can. I always say that, educate where you can. We all have people who don't read. Like for me, I'll give just a 1-minute example. I was traveling up country and I like using public means, and I'm always traveling with my son. I like going to Kenya with my son because I think he likes that environment, and I think it's good for other people to understand him as well as me. I don't like hiding my son, so that maybe other people can get that encouragement, So I had time to educate some people in the public means. I like taking public means traveling. It's almost like 7 hours drive from the city to my home, and we took it. And my son is not good at it, but because of the flights, it's always like 20 hours. So we stopped at a place just to take fresh air, and my son just came out of, because he really wanted to help himself, to do a number one, to pee.
Good.
And out of the matatu, he just peed right there. Like, there was no time. He had no sense, like, where am I? So this guy was really looking at me like he was waiting for my son. And he came to me and said, you need to teach your son manners. So I just kept quiet for a minute and thought, okay, now here we are. I waited. I took my son in the car, and I was pacing up and down because we had a few minutes, and I was thinking how I'm going to talk to this guy. Like, I was so mad, and again I'm thinking, okay, so how are we gonna approach this now? I told my daughter, hold my son for a minute, I'm coming back. So I looked for that guy. I didn't find him, but I saw him coming out the shop he was eating something, and I cornered him and I said, next time, don't ever ask me how to take it. Then this guy was like, you are a mother. And I said, okay, you know what? I'm going to now teach you, because it's not working the way I'm approaching you. I said, and what is that? So we started talking. And because I was so angry, I thought probably the way I approached him being a cultural African man, he thought this woman,
Right.
So he was like trying to argue with me, and I'm thinking, okay, so everybody was looking and thinking, what are those two people arguing about? So when we got back in the public, by the time we reached home, all the front seat was educated about what was going on. They stopped staring at us all the time, their heads looking at my son. But they said, is he okay? He needs something, Like, and then you finish that part of educating the public means. You've reached home, you're so tired. You're now coming out to take another public means. And when you come out to take another the ones who are there trying to take your luggage, they are looking at my son because he's flapping. You're like, oh my God, I'm not doing this again. Then we take the Uber, and the guy who's driving the Uber is like, is he okay? Like, okay, this is another class we have. So we're going I'm talking to him. So when he left, he's like, I have never heard about this problem. But you know what? Take him to the church. I said, no problem, I'll take him to the church. But now if you see a child like this, don't always think this, don't always stare, just, So I think the lesson is, when they stare, just you can say hi, because sometimes they're just wondering. It can be rude to stare, but sometimes it's a good thing to I had this lady shown and said, when in our cultures they say do not stare, but you'll tell your child looking at that person. But sometimes it's good to say, when they stare at you, just say hi. They will also say hi, because they're thinking, okay. So thank you guys for this panel. It's been eye-opening for all of us. We've learned one or two, and I hope next time we'll come back. It can be with a different panel, but a mix. And I can't say I appreciate all of you with all the information, important, anything that you've chipped in. It has really, all the knowledge is given me. I'm grateful. So Aura and Rachel, thank you for coming in. I know you're at work. I can. And Muinda, I know you're at home. Shane is about to jump on your chair. Marie, with your potty training, okay, good luck.
Right.
For a year, I made it.
Right.
Yeah, thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you for having me. It was nice meeting all of you.
Yes,
I
likewise.
learned a lot. Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Thank you, guys. So we're gonna end up the broadcast, and
Sure. Thank you.
bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. All right.